Welcome to Shut Up and Say Something. I am your host and creator of the show, Deedre Daniel. This podcast is all about how to live a fascinating life, and we're learning how to do that one interesting conversation at a time. We try to stay away from discussing politics, religion, and the ad nauseum topic du jour, but anything else is fair game. And today I'm speaking with Joanna Pineda, and she is the CEO and chief troublemaker at Matrix Group International. That's a digital agency that helps associations and nonprofits increase membership, revenue, and engagement. And they do it through web, mobile, social, and virtual hybrid meetings. And Joanna was the second person to pay me to run online game shows. I don't know if she knows that, but
I don't even know that. But let me tell you, you did a beautiful job and it was so fun.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I had mentioned Terry Cardin many episodes ago. She was the second podcast. And so she was the very first person to pay me to run online game shows when COVID hit. And I was still trying to figure out the tech and all that. And then she referred me to you. And then you hired me for several sessions for your employees. And then that just took off. And that's how I survived COVID. That's how I paid the bills for almost 2 years, were those online game shows. So you never forget the first people that took a bet on you. So I really appreciate that, Joanna, a lot. Yeah.
Man, Deedre, I didn't know. And gosh, if it helped you, then that's wonderful. In the Philippines, there's an expression called the buena mano, which is like the first hand, I think. And so like when my mom ran a store, she would say that the first customer, in this case, I'm the second customer, but she would always say the first customer is the lucky one because they'll bring in other customers. So maybe I helped you bring in more customers. And I certainly talked about it and like we had a great time.
I know you brought in other customers because then other people said that they heard about it from you and it just grew from there. So I'm very grateful. I'm having Joanna on today, not because she was my second customer or the fact that she's obviously a very interesting person, but she said something to me recently at an event. And we're going to bring up Terry Cardin again. So Terry Cardin has this event called Non-Duzapalooza, and she hired me to be her ending keynote session. And she tasked me with doing like a unique review of all of the sessions. So all of the speakers from the past 2 days, she wanted me to do a unique, entertaining review of all the sessions. And I thought, how am I going to do that? So I asked everyone, all the speakers, to give me one word that summarized their talk. And then what I did is I turned that into a song, but I didn't tell them what I was going to use those words for. So months later, it's the day of the event. I'm a little nervous. And I walk up to Joanna and I said, hey, do you remember your word? I just want to make sure that she knows her word. And she says a completely different word. And I thought, oh my God, that's not part of the lyrics. I don't have it on the screen. And then she realized I meant something else. And it turns out that Joanna assigns a word or two every year that guides her life. And I thought that was such a fascinating concept. And so I wanted to talk about that today, about her word and what sort of decisions she's made. And there's so many other questions I have as well.
Thank you. Now, Deedre, before we get into the word of the year, we have to talk about Non-Duzapalooza because first of all, you did an amazing job as the closing keynote. It was fresh, it was different, it was funny, and it was so engaging. So listeners, what she did is you ended up creating this kind of wrap-up song where you somehow managed to tie together all the themes of the conference. But what it did was, I think it created a lot of anticipation on the part of the attendees. And plus, all the speakers just thought it was really, really fun. And it was a reason to stick around until the end. So really nice job.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it was different and it's fun to do something new and different. Of course, it's also a gamble, right? You never know how it's going to land because this is the very first time you're doing it. So just like the jokes I wrote, I thought, are they going to laugh? Are they going to find it funny? Let's see what happens.
What was great about it was clearly tailored to the event. And it made the event even more bespoke. So Terry is famous for creating events that are different each time. You don't want to miss a Terry event because it's different each time and she tweaks it. So you helped her create something until the very end, something very unique and different.
Thank
So
you. Well, I think we both love Terry too. I think everything
we
she
do. We
does
love
is
Terry.
special.
Totally agree. 100%.
All right, so let's talk about you. You select a word every year to guide your decisions and reach your goals. And I think that's a fascinating concept. So, first off, how long have you been doing that and why did you start?
I
Okay.
started a few years ago when I attended some presentation. I'm in a CEO peer group, and we were talking about words and how they can guide your thinking. And the speaker said something like, think about a word that will kind of inspire you. I take a word and I put it up on the wall. It's usually on my window or it's on my mirror. And the word for 2021, actually 2022, has been the same because I felt like I needed it. But the word is fierce. That's the word I gave you. And you went, wait a minute. That's not the word you gave me for the conference. But when someone
Yes, it was
says,
not.
what's your word at Matrix? My word is fierce.
Okay, so what have you done or decided to do because your word was fierce?
I felt like during the pandemic, especially, there was a tendency on the part of not just me, but really on the part of a lot of people to think inward and to be maybe a little bit more timid about doing big things, right? Because it was scary out there. I remember early in the pandemic, people were even afraid to leave their houses, right? I remember taking a walk in my neighborhood and people actually looked down. And I actually posted on the neighborhood Facebook group. I said, hey, even if we can't be together and even if we have to be apart, we don't have to be strangers. So if you literally, I said this, Deedre, I said, if you see me walking down the street, please wave to me. Because it felt very alienating to not be able to come up to your neighbor and talk to them or give them a hug. And I thought, you know what, even if we're going to be 6 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet apart, we can be neighborly. So I felt like that feeling of alienation, of being timid, being afraid was emanating our life, kind of dissipating everywhere, if you will. It was creeping in everywhere. And I thought, I don't want this to happen to me. I don't want it to happen to my family. I decided the word was fierce. And I felt like I needed to be fierce personally. I needed to be fierce with my business, or my business was going to die potentially during the pandemic. There was a real risk of that. You talked about how your game helped you survive the pandemic. For me, it was if clients were going to start canceling projects or if they weren't going to approve new projects because they didn't have revenue, then that really jeopardizes the business. And so I said to myself and to my team, we have to be fierce for ourselves, for our staff, and for our clients. What do we need to do to say to ourselves and believe it that we're going to get through this and we're going to make the bold decisions that will help us not just survive, but thrive. So it's fierce. So, because, you'll say, I don't think we can do that. It's too scary. Well, yeah, it might be scary and you might be out there a little bit, but you got to be fierce. I find that I often have a parallel thing happening professionally and in martial arts. So when I'm in a rut professionally, I will be in a rut at the studio as well. I think it's just kind of symptomatic of what's happening with me. I then say to myself, okay, what do I need to do to push out of this? And I find that the word fierce works for me. I'm going to have to find a new word for 23, but it's helped me in 21 and 22.
I love that. So I was snooping around on your website and I read that you're a black belt in Taekwondo and a brown belt in Hapkido. That's really impressive. So first off, why did you learn those two forms of martial arts?
My older son was in third grade. I think he was just finishing up third grade. And I was driving around with him one day and he said, Mom, I really want to start Taekwondo. So we ended up signing up for Taekwondo at a local martial arts studio. And to be honest, I thought, oh, dear God, another commitment where you sit there for 45 minutes. And I already felt like I didn't have time to really fit in another 2 45-minute blocks of time where you're basically sitting and watching your kid. But you do it because your kid wants to do it and because he means a lot to you and he really wants to do it. And then I'm watching him one day and there's this good-looking black belt dad who's sitting next to me. He taps me on the shoulder and he says, I used to be just like you. And Deedre, I took one look at him and I thought, there ain't no way I was ever like you. You are young and fit and good looking and a black belt. And I am chubby, overweight, middle-aged, out of shape lady. And he said, because that's how I felt. I had a younger son who was 2 years old and I was feeling just tired all the time and just not very fit and not in good shape and sometimes low energy. And he looked at me and he said, I used to sit here and watch Serena, my daughter. And then one day I decided to take lessons with her and it was so fun. And here I am a few years later, I'm a black belt. And I kind of brushed him off. And then later that week, there was an interview on NPR with Carol Dweck, who's a Stanford professor. And for some reason, it was an interview with her where she talked about how kids that she's interviewing say, my parents are so obsessed with me and getting into college. I wish they had interests of their own. And I thought, oh my God, is that me? Am I so focused on my children outside of my job? And then I had a meeting with my CEO peer group and I was complaining a little bit about not being in shape. And they said, what are you going to do about it? Don't come back to this meeting unless you actually do something about it. And I thought, action, right? And so I remember thinking, oh God, I've got my next peer group meeting in a couple of weeks. And it's a badge of honor to be able to say, okay, you gave me feedback and I actually did something with it. Otherwise, what are you doing in this group asking for feedback, but you're not going to do anything about it?
Right.
So I signed up for a trial, a 2-week Taekwondo trial. Deedre, I started taking classes with the 9-year-olds and it was so fun. They play K-pop in the studio. You run, you jump, you do all kinds of stuff. You learn a little bit of forms and it's high energy and it is a workout. I probably looked like I was going to die. And when the instructor said, do 20 push-ups and I did 3, I thought, oh my God, am I ever going to be able to do 20 push-ups? And then Deedre, you just, what do they say in the studio? A black belt is a white belt who never gave up. I didn't stop. I just kept going. And if you go and you apply yourself, eventually they say you're ready for the next belt. And so then you become an orange belt and then you become a yellow belt. And then a few belts later, you're a blue belt and then you're a red belt. And then you become a bow black, which is right below black. And at that point, you have to make some tough decisions. Are you ready to invest the time and the training to actually train for black belt? Because what I tell folks is the journey from white to bow black is actually the same as bow black to black. I was in the studio 6 days a week. And some days I was in the studio for 3 hours. And this went on for about 5 months, Deedre. That was
and
to
you're
get
still
ready
married.
For the black belt test. Actually, it's funny that you say that. I actually had a conversation with my family about this because I knew that it would take a lot of training. And I said to them, I would like to do this, but I need your support. And my husband, God bless him, said, you should do it. And
good.
so it was 5 months. I mean, like they didn't see me. I would be at the studio on Sundays from 2 to 5, on Saturdays from 11 to 3, just crazy. And then when I would get home, I'd have to soak in the tub for 45 minutes because everything hurt.
Yeah.
So that was Taekwondo. And then when I took my black belt test, you get your belt 6 months later. And then I think there was another 6 months. When you're a first degree black belt in Taekwondo, that's really just the start of your journey. So when you see these like actors and stunt people doing all these crazy things, but they're probably doing 4th and 5th degree stunts and kicks. I'm never going to be a 2nd degree in Taekwondo because of all the jumping kicks. I can't do it anymore between the knees, the hips, the whatever. My studio teaches another martial art. It's called Hapkido, which is another Korean martial art. And that particular martial art focuses on joint locks and throws. Basically like inflicting a lot of pain. Oh, yes.
Throwing people?
I am throwing people and I'm being thrown. So it's very different from Taekwondo. In Taekwondo, there's a lot of space between you because you're mostly kicking. You can always tell Taekwondo people because they're kicking. But Hapkido people get close. And it took me 6 months of the Hapkido instructor saying, get close, you're too far, because you're trying to get people in a pretzel to inflict pain, and then you're trying to get them on the ground. So that's what we do. And I've been doing Hapkido for far longer, and the journey has been slower because it's harder. When I'm not traveling, I try to be in the studio 3 times a week.
So have you ever been in a street fight?
What the instructors actually say. They say, look, you don't want to really get into a fight. You just want to do enough to get the hell out of there. And if someone grabbed a wrist, like at a party, or someone grabbed me, I could probably get away pretty fast. And I could probably inflict enough pain that they'd say, oh, that was a mistake. And not cause a fuss. I'll show you some of these sometimes. There's these techniques where nobody around you knows what's happening, but you just really wrench somebody's wrist and then said bye-bye.
Oh, yeah. I want to learn those moves.
Deedre, let me tell you, and I'm not being modest here, I'm not very good because I haven't been going enough, but I love it. And it keeps me in shape. I feel like it keeps me sharp, both mentally and physically. And the community is just amazing.
And that's really important to have a balanced life. Do you think it also gives you a little swagger?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. That's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to be a black belt, because I would see the black belts at the studio and they had this swagger. And I thought, man, I need some of that. And I feel like it gave me that, because I know that if someone, I'm at a bar or something and someone grabs a wrist or someone grabs me by the waist, they are not going to be able to get away with that. Yes, absolutely.
Do you think it also helps you in tackling problems in your business or other things that come your way? What else does martial arts teach you?
So a couple things. I actually did a presentation, you're going to laugh, at the ASAE annual conference in 2020. I did a 5-minute Ignite talk on 5 lessons from martial arts. And one of the lessons was you have to know how to take a punch. One of the instructors said, look, at some point in your life, you're going to get punched. You might as well learn what it feels like and then know how to avoid it, but also know that you won't die from it probably, right?
Yeah.
So that was for me the lesson. Like, you know how to take a punch. But the other lesson, Deedre, is that sometimes you take the punch to position you for something else. So sometimes you take the hit because it gets you closer to your opponent, and then you can execute the kick. So that, for me, has been important. But the other thing I'll tell you is there have definitely been times when I just had a terrible day at work and I think, oh my God, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of this? It's doom and gloom. Like the world sky is falling. This is terrible. And the inclination in that situation is to just push through and keep working. But I know that when I'm in that state, I should just go work out. And if I go do a really strenuous 1.5-hour workout, Deedre, wouldn't you know, when I come out of there, somehow the world is a better place.
Yeah.
And nothing changed except your attitude. But somehow I like to say that it's my version of mindfulness, because it's an 1.5 hours of not thinking about my children, my marriage, my business, whatever proposal I'm working on, whatever crappy thing happened at work. Because if you don't pay attention, you'll get hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think it cleanses the mind in addition to really cleansing and strengthening the body. And you just come out of it physically drained, but with a clear head. So that has probably been one of the most important benefits.
One of the things I've learned about you over the years is that you have a wide variety of interests, and you are a diehard Star Wars fan. And I want to know what you think about the Andor series.
Oh my God, you're going to be so disappointed because I haven't watched it yet.
What?
I know.
It's because you're so busy with all these other things. You are running a huge company.
That's part of it. I have been busy, but usually I watch these series with my boys. And so we're kind of waiting until my older son comes back from college, and then we'll watch it together with my younger son. So, but in general, huge diehard Star Wars fan, love The Mandalorian. And even if like people said, oh, the Boba Fett series wasn't amazing, I love it all. But love The Mandalorian series.
Okay, well, I loved Andor, and I loved it so much better than some of the other series that have come out. And I think the reason why I loved it so much is it didn't feel forced. They weren't pandering to the audience. There were no cameos or awkward ties to plot lines. They're not trying to tell us about another relative of Skywalker.
Not creating a situation where you're like, wait, something used to be canon, but not anymore.
Yeah. Like with The Mandalorian, it almost reminded me of Sons of Anarchy. Like every episode, there's going to be some sort of conflict or whatever. Like with this, it sets you up for the rebellion, and the storytelling is fantastic. The acting is fantastic, and they're not pandering to the audience. It's none of this big name stuff to attract people. It's just a great story, and I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it. It pulled me back in because The Mandalorian, I liked it, but I started to think it's the same old stuff again. And at least with Andor, they haven't put Baby Yoda in there again. It's a real story. And what's great is, since you've waited for your son to come home, is you'll be able to watch it all at once. There you are, Baby Yoda.
I have a Baby Yoda stuffed animal that I just showed Deedre. Sits on my desk and, waves to people.
See, here's the thing. I don't have anything against Baby Yoda. It's just sometimes I feel like some executive with not a lot of creativity said, hey, let's put a baby Yoda in the scene. The crowd will love it, kind of stuff. You don't feel that with Andor at all. It's a great story.
Well, I'm
so
looking forward
excited
to
about
it
it.
then, now that I've gotten this review from you.
All right, so you're the CEO of this very successful business in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm sure it gets lonely. I'm sure you have this awesome family and a support group of friends. You've touched on the CEO group that you're with, but for all the entrepreneurs out there and for all the people that have climbed their way to the top, how are you keeping yourself motivated? Where do you get your new ideas and your inspiration and all that?
I'll tell you, for me, I'm lucky in that I have an executive team that I trust a lot, and we've been together a long time. And they're creative, they're curious. We've got a monthly meeting where we just talk about what's possible. We talk about the future. And so they've been terrific. I am in a CEO peer group. Meeting once a month is inviolate. Like, you cannot schedule over this thing. It's my opportunity to meet with other CEOs, and we hear amazing speakers, and then we process issues. And then it's a chance for you to talk to somebody and say, I've got this idea. What do you think? There's also 3 very close friends who are CEOs that I have coffee with on a regular basis. And this is probably the group that I find is the most curious, and we are the most supportive of each other. So every couple months, we'll just have coffee and we'll share what we're thinking, what's happening in our businesses, and then we'll share the books that we're reading. So that's fun.
Yeah. What advice would you give somebody who doesn't have a CEO peer group? It's kind of like dating. How do they find them? How do they find the right ones? Where should they look? What should they look out for?
Start inviting people to coffee. That's what I did. I started inviting people to coffee. And if you feel like there's energy from having coffee with that person, then invite another person. And then invite another person. There's only ever 4 of us maximum, because once it gets to be more than 4 when we have coffee, there almost isn't enough airtime to really find out what's going on with people. But I find that because it's the same 4 people, or sometimes it's just 3, because you're meeting regularly, you get to continue the conversation that you had. And so there's not a lot of, hey, so what do you do? And getting to know each other and each other's businesses. You also really get invested in each other's businesses. But in this case, they run completely different businesses. So they got no skin in the game. They're just going to give me good feedback. If you get energy from them and they're candid with you and they're really willing to share, then keep inviting them. But if they don't, just don't invite them back.
Yeah. Don't make it a big thing.
Don't make it a big deal. No. Don't say, oh, we're going to have coffee every couple months. I basically just say, hey, do you want to have coffee? And I'm going to invite a couple other people. And they'll say yes. Everyone's really ultimately a nice person. But if you just don't feel like, we didn't quite gel, or the person just was holding back, or for whatever reasons, they're just not gelling, just don't invite them back.
Yeah. And if you haven't defined it as this is our CEO group, then they don't feel like they've been kicked out of the club.
It's just coffee.
Yeah.
It's just coffee. And you basically say, hey, so what's going on? And then, because we have coffee pretty regularly, it's now to the point where we know what to do, right? So you talk about family, we talk about stuff. And then I'll say, so what's going on? And if you have something going on and you want to talk about something, then you'll say, well, I need some advice, or I need help, or I need some feedback. And then everybody, here's the other thing. If you feel like you need the feedback, then I'll actually text these other CEOs and I'll say, I could use some help. Who's available for coffee? And we're close enough that you move hell and high water so that you can be there for your friend, right? I'll say, I'll clear something. Does Friday work? Sure, let's do Friday. And then you know that you're there for X person. So what's going on? What do you need?
Yeah.
I have to tell you a great story. So I was meeting with this group and we were working on a project. We were the consultants, not the people doing the work. And I had really bad news for the CEO. Like, this project that they were working with this other vendor was going to be late, right? And I had the task of giving him that news. And I was having coffee with this group and I said, oh God, how am I going to tell him? And one of the other CEOs said, wait until Monday, because then you haven't ruined his weekend. And I said, oh my God, what great advice. That simple piece of advice probably meant that you're right. I didn't ruin this guy's weekend.
You know, a lot of people deliver bad news on a Friday, and I always think that's so terrible. But they think, oh, they'll have the weekend to blow it off, or
No. You should always deliver bad news on a Monday or a Thursday. So you're supposed to lay off people on Thursday. Not that I've laid off people regularly. I've laid off one person in my life, but you're supposed to do it on a Thursday. And here's why. You lay people off on a Thursday, and then on Friday, which is a lost cause day anyway, I read this somewhere, or some speaker said it. You tell the team, we're really sorry, this is terrible. And then on Monday, the CEO messages, we got to be stronger, we got to keep moving forward. If you do it too early in the week, the whole week is gone.
Yeah.
Right? Because then everyone is pining away for these folks and feeling really mad at the organization. So anyway, so that's the advice that someone, I think in one of my Vistage groups said, this is a terrible thing to be talking about on this podcast. But here's what I find also in new biz. If we get a phone call on a Friday about a deal, it's almost always good news because they want to give us the good news going into the weekend.
Oh, look at that.
So if we get the phone call, if they're like, we're going to make the decision Friday and we don't hear, we're like, probably means we didn't get it. Not always, but it usually means we didn't get it. If we get the call on Friday, they're so excited to share the news that they call us on a Friday.
And then they go to happy hour and enjoy their weekend because they delivered good news. So
exactly. And you feel good about it, right?
Yeah. I love that. One of the things that I've noticed about you is you always have these new ideas. You're constantly evolving your business. And I know you can't chase every new idea out there. So how do you decide a new idea is worth pursuing and then allocating assets towards it?
We're idea machines at Matrix. We're full of ideas. You sit me down with a client, with my team, and we're going to come up with 12 good ideas. The ideas that we end up pursuing are the ones that people seem to want, if that makes sense. If it's an idea that we think, hey, this is probably worth pursuing, what we do is we'll do a prototype and get feedback fast from clients so that we haven't sunk a lot of resources into it. And what you do is you go to your most trusted clients and you say, we've got an idea. What do you think about this? When we were thinking about, should we build a virtual conference platform? It was audacious and we knew that it was going to be a lot of work, but somehow I was like, you know what? I think this is something we have to do. Went to my VP and I said, can I have a 1-day sprint? I need resources. We were pretty busy, but she said, you can have such and such for 1 day. So we did something, showed it to a couple of clients and they said, wow, this is amazing. So that gave me enough to keep going.
You mentioned earlier that you've only laid off one person after all the years you've been in business, and you've been in business for
23 years.
Yeah. In 23 years, you've only laid off one person. So let's talk about hiring. Obviously, you're doing a fantastic job hiring people. So what is the single most important trait you look for in your applicants?
Curiosity. Single most important. I find that curious people, they just do well in my organization. Curious people go deep. Curious people really want to know how something works. And they're the ones who, when I say, hey, X client wants to do this, they're the ones who'll say, here are the things that they're not asking for. Here's what it should do. And by the way, have you thought about this? That's the curious person. The other thing is when I say, hey, there's something new that we want to think about, the curious person is the one who's going to figure out how to make it work. So curiosity is the number one thing. We've got a bunch of traits that we look for, but that's number one.
And there are a lot of people, especially in the tech world, they're going to be out and about looking for jobs. So what do you, as someone on the other side of this, what do you suggest job searchers do to land their dream job?
The best candidates can articulate how and why they did something. So if they say things like, well, I'm a really good problem solver, anybody can say that, but it's actually not true. Most people aren't good problem solvers, but I actually need them. So I'll say in the interview, oh, give me an example of a problem that cropped up and what you did. And if they say, oh, well, nothing comes to mind right now, then they're not really problem solvers. But the real problem solvers, they'll get a smile on their face and they'll say, oh, let me tell you about this time that we found this memory leak and it was eluding us. This is what we did. Or let me tell you about the time that there was a server and it was crashing and burning. Or let me tell you about the time that the client said this, but they really wanted this, but they really couldn't articulate. And so this is what we ended up doing. So the more real life examples and stories you can give that really show kind of your traits, don't be disingenuous. And because if you're disingenuous, you're going to get hired and you're going to find that there's a mismatch.
Yeah. And that's a problem for everybody.
Absolutely. The folks who are curious and have a way of really talking about the work that they've done and clearly show a lot of interest and passion, then they're the ones who get hired.
Yeah. And I think for people practicing interviews, instead of just thinking about those generic interview questions, tell me about yourself or what have you, that they really should stop and think about their story and different ways that they've conflict. They're able to rally the troops and, to your point, solve a problem. And I think some people that haven't interviewed in a long time, they probably haven't really thought that through, even though they might have a great story. They just can't think of one on the spot. So they need to take that time to craft their story.
Everyone has a great story. Everyone.
Yeah.
My kids tell me that I sit next to the most interesting people on the plane. It's because everyone's interesting. And I go into every plane ride and every cab ride thinking, what's this person's story? And there's always something cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, you recently launched a new podcast, speaking of gathering people's stories.
I did.
Yeah. And now you run two. You have two of them.
I run two.
Yeah. I would imagine that you love podcasting because you love hearing people's story. What are the major differences between the two shows that you're running right now?
Well, first of all, they're really different. The first one is called K-Drama Chat. And it is because during the pandemic, I discovered Korean dramas and I fell in love with them. It's probably why I haven't watched Andor, because nothing takes me away from my Korean dramas these days, except the Great British Baking Show. So there's lots of podcasts where mostly women talk about their favorite Korean dramas, and they'll talk about 5 of them in one episode. And our format, I do this with my friend Jen, is completely different. We take one show per season and we recap and analyze each episode.
Oh.
So with these Korean dramas, if you pick the right one, there is so much to talk about because the choice of the flower matters, the choice of someone's birthday matters, the color choices. So we really geek out on all of these themes, and we call them the K-drama elements, where we say, so which K-drama elements did we see in this episode? Because we see them in all the shows. So this is just total fangirl geeking out on Korean dramas. Wrapping up season 2. In the first season, we talked about Hotel de Luna, which is an amazing K-drama on Netflix. And season 2, we talk about It's Okay to Not Be Okay. We're going to be talking about episode 15 this week. So super exciting. Okay, so that's the first podcast. Please listen if you love Korean dramas, or
even if you don't, you want to learn something new. I mean,
absolutely. You know, what's fun too, I talk about journeys a lot. In my journey to explore Korean dramas, it's led me to learn more about Korean history. I'm actually doing Korean on Duolingo.
Wow.
And with each episode, we do a little bit of Korean culture. I think in one episode, we talked about how to say hello and how to say goodbye. And we talk about like common Korean foods. We talk about that stuff. But let me talk to you about the second podcast. The second one is called Associations Thrive. Completely different. And what I wanted to do with this podcast is showcase and celebrate successful associations and their leaders. Interview an association exec, an executive director, a CEO, a president, ask them about their organization, ask about their journey to becoming the top staff. And then we talk about the 1, 2, or 3 things that the organization is doing differently to thrive. And these execs have amazing stories. The idea is that they're really sharing with the greater association community the formula that they stumbled upon for an annual conference, or the new research that's helping their members navigate the future, or the new way that they're approaching advocacy. Deedre, I found that there's a lot of association podcasts out there, but they're mostly interviews with vendors. And I don't want to talk to vendors. I want to talk with execs about the things that they're doing.
Yeah. What I learned working at Geico, I ran the affinity marketing division, and I had never really paid attention to associations. And after working in that role, I realized, wow, everything that you buy, touch, see, hear, and smell is connected to an association. And the power of that network is absolutely incredible. And the collective personalities of the people at those associations and how they were so passionate about certain topics. So, for instance, I went to the American Society of Civil Engineers. And I had a little faux pas. I learned very quickly, you don't ask them for bottled water because, see, they're making water safe for all of these people around the world. How dare you drink bottled water? Plus, it's bad for the environment and all that kind of stuff. But that was definitely not going to happen at their conference. But everyone has this thing that they really care about. And so for all the people out there listening who are thinking about a career change, I strongly suggest looking at associations because they need that innovation. They need people with real business savvy and creative problem solving. And then you would actually be working on something that matters to you in an industry that you really care about. Just pick an industry, pick a topic. There's an association tied to that.
I totally agree with you. Associations, like many industries, are crying for talent. And so if someone says, I'm really interested in communications. I'm interested in marketing. I'm interested in government affairs. You can do that job within an association. And like you said, make a difference, but also get exposed to all these different companies that are doing really interesting things. If you work for FMI, for example, one of my clients, they represent grocery stores plus the grocery manufacturers plus the distributors. Man, what I have learned from this organization about food retail, it's amazing. And they're doing an amazing job of helping their members navigate the food retail landscape, make money, do well in their communities, and stay out of trouble. They're doing great stuff.
Yeah, there really is an association for everything.
I only have a few episodes of Associations Thrive, but I'll say this. If you are interested in the journey to becoming the top exec, what's coming through in the interviews is that nobody says, I want to be an association exec.
Yeah, it's not a college major.
But, well, there is nonprofit management, I think, at a few places.
Is there? Yeah?
But
okay.
I think so. But what's interesting is, like, nobody growing up says, gee, I want to be an association exec. But what's coming through in the interviews, Deedre, is that they probably stumbled upon it and now they're finding it very meaningful and satisfying. So that's a really interesting theme that's coming through in the interviews. And then for the good ones, these execs work in partnership with a really good board. And I hesitate to say they're willing to take risks and they're not afraid to fail, because honestly, everyone should be afraid to fail. Because one big failure and you're out of business. So you should be afraid to fail, but they're willing to experiment.
That's good. Yeah. There are a lot of people out there that aren't willing to experiment at all. You have to make sure the culture wherever you work is okay with mistakes, because some places will not allow an experiment because they will not allow a mistake, and they won't allow you to go in and tinker and try again. They view it as a failure. That's an F and you're out, where it needs to be embraced. Like, all right, well, what did we learn and how do we make it better? Because that's all part of it. So what do you see the associations dealing with now? Like, they're coming out of the pandemic. What does the future look like for them?
I think that associations, the good ones, really worked very hard during the pandemic to keep their communities together and to provide very relevant information. They have to be thinking about, how do we keep up this level of engagement without burning out my staff? Because I see a lot of staff that said, wow, we were doing 3 webinars a week and we can't possibly sustain that level of activity. So how do you ease up a little bit on the gas without losing the momentum? So that's the first thing. I think the other thing is that most associations, since they derive revenue from their events, I think most associations should have a really good conversation at the organization about, what does our event strategy look like? A lot of organizations are saying, let's go back to in-person exclusively. I think that's a mistake, because in the same way that a lot of people don't want to go back to in-person office work, I think they're saying that about events. Now, that's clearly not 100%. I work with many trade associations that really want to be back in person because they're networking and they're doing business. But many professional societies, where the emphasis is on education, between budget cuts, fiscal constraints, family constraints, they can't travel. And so for many, like my sister, for example, who's got MS, she was able to take advantage of education that she couldn't before.
Yeah.
And to take it away just feels wrong.
It's time for the pet peeve segment. Everyone has those little things that annoy them, but we rarely mention them when we get to know someone. What are your pet peeves?
One pet peeve is when people don't take notes, because then I think, what the heck are you doing in this meeting? You're going to have to-do items, and how are you going to remember them? I also say that the person who takes notes writes history, which is why I take really good notes, because in the end, I write history and I get to drive the agenda. Because when all else fails, we go back to my notes and my vision of what happened at the meeting and the next steps that I've laid out. That's one pet peeve. Another pet peeve is when in meetings, when I see people multitasking, because I feel like it's hugely disrespectful to the people in the meeting, not just the clients, but to your coworkers as well, because your attention is split. And as I like to tell my staff, when I'm in a meeting with a staff person want my advice. They want to discuss something with me. It's disrespectful of me to be doing something else. If I'm in a meeting with a client, they're paying me to pay attention to them. I should give them my full attention. And even when I give someone my full attention, my attention wanders. Imagine how my attention is going to wander if I'm intentionally splitting my attention.
I've been in meetings where everyone's on their laptop and looking at their cell phone while they're also supposedly paying attention to the presenter. And I always feel so terrible for the presenter because they've practiced and rehearsed and they did not imagine, oh, everyone's going to be looking at something else. They're imagining that they're going to look at them. Don't be there. Go somewhere else.
I kicked someone out of a meeting once.
Oh,
it was somebody who worked for me. He was doing something else. And I said, hey, we're in a meeting. And he's like, no, I got this. He's like, I'm paying attention. And I said, get out of here. I said, go take care of the email and then come back. And then he left. And then afterwards, his boss was like, oh, God, do you have any idea what just happened? He was clueless.
I also feel that if other people are on their phones, then everyone else there that perhaps wouldn't be on their phone thinks, well, don't mind if I do. And then they pull it out too. And then you have an entire room of people that aren't paying attention. What's crazy to me is that someone is going to do this right in front of you and you're the CEO and founder of the company and they're still going to mess around on their phone or something. That's how normal it's become in society that they don't even think they're being rude.
I totally agree with you, but I'll tell you, we have a set of company fundamentals at Matrix and we open every meeting with the fundamental and we talk about it. And there's 26 of them. And one of them is be present for your coworkers and clients because it is the highest form of respect and attention and caring to pay attention.
Yeah. I think they should all practice martial arts because otherwise they're going to take a punch to the face. You have to focus.
It's an interesting point that you just made. I worry actually that this multitasking and this YouTube hopping has made it so that people don't know how to focus anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that this culture of alerts and blinging, like I'll be at dinner and I put away my phone because I would like to enjoy dinner. And then I'll see people and their phones are just blowing up with alerts. And I think, good God, why are you doing that to yourself? I actually tell my staff, I'm going to be in a meeting for 3 hours. You can't reach me. So deal with whatever it is that comes up. I don't know. I totally mean it. When I'm in my CEO group, I will check email during the break. I'm in this group meeting to pay attention to learn. But I also have intentionally turned off most notifications because it's just hugely distracting. I know it's hard to not be part of the hive mind, but it can't be good for us. I'm guilty of it too. I check email all the time, but for example, I'm working on a big proposal right now. What I actually did is like, I've got a lot of tabs open. I actually started a new window and in that window are just the 3 things that I'm working on plus the website so that visually, as I'm working on the proposal, I'm not seeing any alerts. I'm not even tempted to look at email because there is no tab for email.
Smart.
You know, I gotta like tamp it down sometimes.
I set a timer at 55 minutes. I'm like, I'm going to get this, and this done in 55 minutes. And it's this loud kitchen timer, old school, just winds up. And that's what I
And then you get it done and you feel like you accomplished something, right? Because you gave yourself a timeline. I love that. I'm going to borrow that.
Well, it's only 55 minutes. And then stand up, stretch, quick break. You can look at something else. But that prevents me from constantly flipping back and forth between things.
What were you afraid of as a child? And what are you afraid of now?
I was afraid of the dark. And today I am not afraid of the dark. This time of year when I guess daylight saving ends and all of a sudden like it's dark early, I go through a period where I'm anxious for a few weeks and it's time change. And I think it's probably related to the fear of the dark. I have to become friends with the dark again, if that makes sense. And then by December, okay, it's dark and the dark's not going to kill me and it's okay to be driving and walking in the dark and then we're friends again. But it takes me a few weeks.
What I've never understood is it's only an hour, but it feels like 5 hours.
I was just talking to someone about that. Why does this one measly hour cause such mayhem?
I remember one of the jobs I had at Geico, we had to figure out how many calls were coming into the call center in sales, service, and claims by the minute. Like how many calls were coming in throughout the day, early in the morning till late into the morning the next day. And there was always this hiccup right around this time where you just had to completely shift everything, just sort of throw it out the window. Like, all right, everyone's going to act different this week. We had to look at years past as far as how people would act. There's just behavior changes everywhere. I know my dog is really upset about it. He's been
I'm sure your
filing.
dog is really upset about it because he's starving.
He's been he's been filing some official complaints.
I have a cat that jumps onto my desk at 11 now because at noon, somehow he knows this cat can tell time. At noon, I get a little snack. And where is it?
My husband introduced an evening walk and he did it 3 days in a row, maybe even 2 days in a row. And my dog's like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're doing this every day now. And it knows the time. It is time
Wow.
for this. Oh, yeah. He is the best workout accountability partner because he becomes obnoxious. There's a chair behind me and he will balance on that chair and reach over with one paw trying to get my attention. It is time.
Nice.
I know the time. Oh, yeah. And then he whines. I mean, it's a mess. So, yeah, he has to have his walk 2 a day now.
Rounding this out on a positive note, what are you looking forward to in the future?
Thanksgiving trip to Quebec.
Ooh,
And it
yeah.
was hard during the pandemic to not have these international trips. I said to my family, we're going out of the country, so we're going to Quebec.
How long are you going for?
Not long, Monday to Saturday, because my older son has got to get back to college. But it'll be enough. It'll be enough to be out of my normal routine. It'll be enough to be in a place that's other. I mean, I love the idea that we're going to be in a country with a different language, although they'll speak English. I think it just takes us out of our normal routine. It also knits the family together, I find. The boys just don't fight on these trips.
I love that expression, knits the family together.
And now it's time for the very interesting game show. This isn't trivia. Throw accuracy out the window and give me your most ridiculous and creative answers instead. And let's see if you can come up with the most interesting answer. Are you ready?
And some of these are new questions I wrote just a couple of days ago. So I'd like to see. Yeah, I want to see how they land. This one I've asked a few people before. Artificial intelligence will fire workers in the future. How do you kiss up to a robot boss?
You offer him an oil snack.
An oil snack. I love it. Is it a high quality oil?
Yeah, it's the equivalent of a drink for the robots, right?
Yeah.
Or a treat like chocolate. They're getting oiled or something. Maybe a massage, a polish or something. I think that's how you kiss up to them. You offer them a polish.
Offer them a polish. Very few English words rhyme with the word silver. Make up a word that rhymes with silver and give it a definition.
How about Gilver?
Okay.
And it is, I got to make this up. A Gilver is, I don't know, maybe it's the,
I like Gilver.
You like Gilver?
I do. I can see some definitions there. Gilver, it almost sounds like someone who gives, like they're a gift Gilver, right?
I thought about a Gilver as someone who gives you a gift but doesn't really mean it.
Oh.
A Gilver is, or it could also be like the stuff left over in your bathtub after you take a bath. I don't know. That's Gilver.
Ugh, there's Gilver all in there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. The third question. Some female penguins will have sex with a male penguin for a pebble. What are they doing with these pebbles?
They're doing penguin bowling.
Penguin bowling.
And they need stuff to do bowling, to throw down the little lanes or something. Well, see, these female penguins, they're getting all the food for the baby penguins. So their lives are hard. So when they get a break, they want to do some penguin bowling and they don't have time to be gathering those pebbles. So that's what the men are doing.
I gotcha. Okay. It's all about recreation. Cockroach milk has 4 times the protein as cow's milk. How do you milk a cockroach?
You tickle its belly and rub its antenna, and then maybe the milk comes out?
So are we stroking the antenna? What are we
I
saying here?
I think you're, like, rubbing the antenna between your thumb and your
Oh,
forefinger.
okay, kinda like the little
And
violin,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly, and
yeah,
it
okay.
produces
Uh-huh.
little pleasure sensors or something, and then, like, the milk just kind of oozes out.
Ew, oozing.
Ooh,
Ew,
yes,
yeah,
oozing.
okay, alright. There are no size B batteries in the United States. If they did exist, what do you think they should power?
They're gonna be big honking batteries, and they're gonna power a breast pump.
B for breast.
Yep, but they have to be big and powerful because those things, they're beasts.
Next up, the hail that falls on Saturn and Jupiter is actually diamonds. What luxury item would you like to see rain on Earth, and how would that change society?
Chocolate. The
Mmm.
most wonderful high quality chocolate would rain down on Earth. Do you know that there's a significant portion of the world's population that has never tasted chocolate?
No, I didn't know
How
that.
happy people in Africa don't normally get chocolate, apparently, and other parts of the world. But imagine how happy the world's population would be if high quality chocolate rained down on them.
Well, right now I'm feeling very sad for all the people that have never tasted chocolate. And I wonder if they did, if they would like it, or they would say, "Ugh, this stuff is disgusting." And everyone has a
Who
different
doesn't
palate, right?
who doesn't love chocolate? Everyone loves chocolate. There is a form of chocolate that everybody loves. And I feel like chocolate I remember in 2008 when we had the terrible financial meltdown. I remember reading about how sales of high quality chocolate actually went up because
Mm,
that was one indulgence that people felt like they could still afford. Like you could afford a small box of Godiva chocolates when you couldn't afford anything else.
uh-huh.
So chocolate.
Yeah. I read somewhere that during the Great Depression, red lipstick took off because same thing, that it was little luxury that made women feel sexy,
And red lipstick makes you feel, yeah, a little sassy, maybe.
fierce,
Fierce. I was just
perhaps.
thinking that. I think I wrote a blog post once and it said, I never negotiate a deal without lipstick on. I always go into a meeting with lipstick on
Me
because I feel
too.
like it's part of my war paint.
Yeah, it is.
I think I must have read something in Cosmopolitan like when I was 17 that said, people listen to you more when you wear lipstick. I don't know.
It's
So
probably
it just
true,
stuck.
but I'm the same
Only
way.
because your lips are more visible.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're like, "Pay attention, read
Right.
my lips." All right, and for the last question of the day, which is asked at the end of every episode, what should have been invented by now?
A dryer that folds your clothes.
A dryer that folds your clothes. I
I
love
hate
that.
folding laundry.
I don't
Why
like
can't it fold the laundry for me? And imagine, okay, so I was thinking about this. A dryer that does a good job, then because it folds it, your clothing doesn't get wrinkled. And then
yeah,
you could have little add-ons like you can fold it the Marie Kondo way, or you could fold it like the whatever way, right?
uh-huh.
And then
The
they make more
military
money.
fold.
Yeah, the military fold or the whatever fold. But
The
anyway, so
the
that's
Gap t-shirt, and it's got the
there you
little,
go.
yeah,
Yes.
right, uh-huh.
You
I
could
love
put the
that.
military crease in the pants fold.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't like putting clothes away. I just
Oh, I don't mind that. It's the folding. God, there will be weeks where life got really busy. There'll be 3 loads of laundry, like,
mhm.
sitting in a pile in my room, and then I'll think, "Oh god, I gotta fold the laundry." And it actually doesn't take a lot of time, but still,
Uh-huh.
can we not invent something to fix this? It's
Yeah,
so mundane, I know, like,
no, it's not. It's not mundane. It's not mundane at all. I also want the robot that then puts it away for me. I don't know why. I just don't wanna spend the time putting it away, and then I have piles of folded clothes. I'm like, "Nah, I gotta do this." And there's so many other things I'd rather be doing besides this right now.
Well, that's gonna be the robot that we have
Right.
to polish and bribe to fold and put away our laundry in the future.
Mhm. Yep.
In the future, we're gonna have personal robots that we all have to program, and I really do believe this, and so I think I read an article that said, in the future, the ability to program your robot will be part of your personal success.
Mm.
So everyone's gonna have to know how to interact with robots and program them.
Well, I think also too, making sure that the robot is adding to your life instead of distracting from it. Think about your cell phone and how that is such a distraction. And then you have this robot that's talking to you or doing whatever else. That could become this huge distraction when you really need the robot to perhaps do your laundry and fold and put it away instead of maybe playing a video game with you. I would imagine people would wind
Totally.
up programming it just to be their best friend and like, hey, let's just
And
go
then we
hang
have to make
out
sure
or
the robots
something.
don't turn against us the way they often do in sci-fi movies. So
Yeah, right. Well, they're able to read you. Well, thanks, Joanna. How can folks get in touch with you?
you can visit my website, www.matrixgroup.net. You can go to my podcast, kdramachat.com. There's a way to reach me. You can go to my blog, thematrixfiles.net, and there are ways to reach me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook.
All right. All over the place. And do you have any last words of advice to the listeners about choosing their word to help them reach their goals?
Decide if you want a verb or an adjective or a feeling.
A verb, an adjective, or a feeling. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you want to feel about next year?
Yeah, exactly. Or do you want to goad yourself into action? Or do you want something that will guide your decision making?
Yeah. Because some people struggle with making the right decision. They struggle with that, right? So if they want to change their life, they need to change the way they make decisions all day, every day, whether it's about money or love or friendship or how they spend their time. How are they going to change all of those little micro decisions that add up to quite a lot? Because it's all those little decisions that have such a huge impact on your life.
Agreed. And also there's the famous not to decide is to decide, right? Like when you don't decide, someone else decides.
Yeah.
Or the decision gets made because you didn't make a decision.
That's right. Yep.
In which case, then what's your word? Maybe the word is act, or maybe the word is decide or decisive or something.
Well, it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Joanna, I just think you're absolutely fantastic and I appreciate all of your insights. All right. Well, bye, everybody. Until next time, be interesting.
Bye.
You have one self-defense tip that you would like to leave the listeners with?
There are pressure points all over the body. And one pressure point that is very, very vulnerable is actually the throat. And if you take your fingers and you just ram it into their throat, you'll have somebody choking, and that gives you time to get the hell out of there. You have to do it with feeling, and you need to say, and I remember taking a self-defense class in college, and I remember the instructor, because as women, we're really taught not to hurt people, and we're taught to be timid almost, right?
Yeah.
And so what the instructor would say is, remember, this person is trying to hurt you, so it is okay to defend yourself. So go for the throat with your fingertips. Just ram it straight in there and then get the hell out of there.
So go for the jugular.
Go for the jugular. Yeah, you're not going to kill them, because if you're Bruce Lee, you'll kill them. But for most of us, you're not going to kill them, and then you can get the hell out of there.
Gotcha. Well, that is definitely fierce, Joanna.
Thank you. It's a good word.
Yes, it is.